IVM.
The Inheritors podcast series by Bloomberg Quint.
I am Sonu Bhasin, and you're listening to The Inheritors, a podcast series that covers all aspects of family businesses. Today, I'm in conversation with Roshan Abbas, who's the managing director at Geometry Encompass. For many of us, Roshan is a familiar voice as well as a familiar face. We have seen him hosting television and live shows. But behind this very public face, Roshan runs a successful events company and has been a pioneer in many ways. Today, he tells us about his journey and the secret of making a partnership work. Let us go right across to Bombay and hear it from Roshan Abbas. Yeah, Roshan, so it's so good to have a conversation with you. It's really been ages since we had a chat. So thank you for taking time out and doing this. You have a very interesting story, and I'm looking forward to understanding how you got where you have over the last 20 odd years. So,
thank you so much for having me on your show. It's lovely to have people part of my journey and where I started to come full circle. It's always wonderful.
Great, good. So, Roshan, you're a first generation entrepreneur.
Right.
Your father was certainly not a businessman. So what drove you to this risky world of entrepreneurship, especially in an age when entrepreneurship really wasn't such a buzzword?
I guess necessity is the mother of all invention.
Right.
And very often what happens is that when I often joke about the fact of saying that people talk about the road less traveled, but what do you do when there is no road at all? So in the late 80s, when I was excited about creativity, there were just not enough creative avenues. And for that reason, I had the option of becoming a 9-to-5 jobber who would get a salary, which I was just not happy doing. I was addicted to having an audience at a very early age because I was on stage since I was 4 years old. And having, constantly seen a few people who had become mini role models for me who were trying their own attempts at creative entrepreneurship, I just found the idea very exciting because my parents had given me a bit of a safety net saying, we've saved some money and this is for you and you can do what you want till we have this, amount with us. I looked on that almost as saying, okay, this is a little bit of a safety net, but I don't want to use it. Being able to understand, I really sometimes I wonder saying, is it a left brain, right brain combination? Why is it that I'm able to see creativity and business go together well? But I just somehow always felt that art purely for art's sake was never going to excite me. It had to have some interest of saying, how do you monetize it? How do you use the audience you build? So I think I was just trying to solve some problems as they came along, and I was a problem solver, so that's what got me started.
Right. And, creativity is not normally associated with entrepreneurship. So,
right.
You talked about the left brain, right brain. These are two completely sets of skill sets that are typically thought to be had by different kinds of people. But you kind of combined both creativity and entrepreneurship. And in this journey of yours, do you think that it is the entrepreneurship part of the brain that has made you a success, or is it more of the creative? So, which of those have you leaned on more?
So creative allows me to, be open to the idea of making 0 to 100. So I often, whenever somebody comes to me with an investment idea, I tell them, I said, you're talking to a person who knows how to create things out of just thin air. Whether it's writing a song, whether it was creating a play, whether it was creating an event, it was all just my imagination. So the creativity gave me the ability to find exciting dreams that I could get other people to see, and then they would come up with the money to fund that dream. So the first part, I do think I leaned on the creativity. The entrepreneurship part was largely about saying, as I said, being a problem solver. I would always try and say that if you were to find a set of like-minded people and use them to solve a problem, what would it be like? And and again, trying to find people with very diverse backgrounds to work together on a problem again excites me. The one other thing about the entrepreneurship part also is that I like taking risks, and money has actually never been my first motive. And I feel that if money is not your first motive, then the openness to failure, the openness to experimentation makes you a little bit more entrepreneurial in your way.
Right, but again, this is counterintuitive, because if you say money is really not the driving force, and you are able to therefore take risks which maybe others cannot, but most people who start down the entrepreneurship journey ultimately do have a money motive in mind.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm altruistic and money is not important. I am saying that when you start a project, if immediately the only thing you're concerned about is its profitability, and that will be your decision-making factor, I in fact deeply believe, and I mean Simon Sinek said it very recently, but what he said about saying that most people are concerned about the what and how of a business, I'm concerned about the why. Does it excite me? Does it get me? Will I do it for free? Will I work 24/7 on just the idea without trying to evaluate, saying, oh my God, I've given 10 hours of work, am I getting output? So I'm saying when you enter an idea or when you enter an enterprise, does it excite you enough for you to say, I will put my everything into it?
Right.
Step two is, of course, and I have often turned and said that art for art's sake, or this coming to the begging bowl to say, can I have your creativity for free? I am not accepting of it at all. But I'm saying when you start an idea, at that point in time, don't let your first port of call be profit. Your first port of call can be, why do I love the idea? Why am I excited about it? What will it do in terms of my audience? What will it do in terms of the problem I want to solve? Then if you come to the next area is how I approach things.
And I agree that passion is really, really important, and there is no journey that starts without passion. But looking back at your journey, and also having interacted with a lot of other entrepreneurs, including creative entrepreneurs, where on that continuum do you see passion taking a backseat and hard reality, practicality taking, 2 steps forward?
Right. No. So again, very often, as I said, that my first call is, does it excite me, which is just my first decision. After that, is it worth my while, becomes my second question, and which is where sometimes I have found ideas that I have got people to execute without me being deeply involved. I will not lose the opportunity. So if God has given me an opportunity, or someone has thrown an opportunity at me, I'm not the kind who will say, I'll first try and say, how can it be done? I will then immediately input and say, for the time that I'm investing in it, what should I be getting? And is it worthwhile? So I do that analysis as well. I also feel that many creative people get lost in trying to do it themselves. Entrepreneurs very often try and find a set of people and then build processes and systems that can constantly solve the problem over and over. Because if you're the singular creative, it's like turning and saying Prasoon Joshi and Piyush Pandey will write great songs. But Ogilvy has developed a system where there are tons of such people who could do great work.
Right.
So I just feel that somewhere if you can build frameworks, which is what I did with the business of my first business was events. And I just felt that if you applied the rules of theater to doing experiential marketing and treated your consumer at the end as an audience, you would always think of engagement. You would always think of ways of getting them a lot more interested. And then you're translating any brand brief that came. So that was the methodology I used to use. Now, am I being paid enough for it? So very early on, I was working in the theatre group. My theatre director was a very well-known theatre director in Delhi and had lots of people working with him. And I used to often turn and say that if you're willing to share with other people, you will be a great leader. Very often people do what I call lifestyle businesses, which only improve their lifestyles. That's not how you run businesses. You must be able to build businesses where everyone is a part of the profit. Everyone down the line feels that they are valued, that they get stuff, and that's how I built organizations.
Yeah. So now that you are talking about building your business, can you take the listeners through your journey of how you moved from stage to the owner of one of the most respected events and consumer interaction companies, please?
It was in '95 that I started doing radio in Delhi, and by about '97 I was doing a lot of hosting because I was a radio and television face. Now I could have been very happy just coming, looking at a script and hosting, but when I would be on stage, I would, because of my theatre background, look at everything else around me, because an actor never treats themselves to be on stage by themselves. It's also the set, the lights, the sound, the music, the stage manager, everything. And I'm very aware of these things around me, and I would constantly go back after one or two events and make my notes saying, if I did this, I would have done so-and-so thing differently. After the first two events, I just couldn't keep my exuberance to myself, and I would tell the client saying, listen, you're doing something wrong. Why don't you do it this way? And because there were such few people who were, I used to find the people who I used to call briefcase boutiques, Haji Sarji kar denge. But they didn't know the process. So when I used to apply a little bit of my mind and tell clients and other people, marketing heads of companies about the process of where I was thinking from, they would be extremely intrigued. Now, from there came the thing of saying, okay, I can just give you this idea, but because I had learned execution, again, because of my background in theatre, I was very happy executing things. So I would say the problem I have to solve is Singer has a conference that's happening where they want a play done. I can write the play and make some money, but if I produce the play, I can build almost an ecosystem which I could then repeat. So I could do that kind of performance for multiple clients. So that would excite me. So I started finding more creators and bringing them to my cause. And I often tell people saying that if you can sell a dream well, if you're a great storyteller, you can get many people to join in your cause. So that's how I started recruiting people initially. Everything used to be very ad hoc. People used to come together for a project or two projects, but it was in '97 when we did a mega project for Motorola. And when we did that launch, it was a paging launch, we were able to do many things in-house, etc. And we were, by the end of the project, sitting on a sizable chunk of money. Many of my friends again turned and said, this is the time when you buy yourself a big car. And I was like, that's not what I want. I want to fuel other dreams. I don't want to buy a car. And so I invested all that money in an office and in finding my partner, Sukrit, who came on board. He was just out of mass communication. And the two of us then started looking for like-minded people. We looked, high-end, I can't tell you, Sonu, we found people at pawn shops, we found people at photocopying stores, we found people who were possibly consuming a play and watching a play and coming out. That's how we recruited our first set of people.
So you So you were looking at the attitude of people. You were not really looking at...
Because I was hiring for abilities that were as yet not templated. Right? If you were looking for someone who's a writer, there are no writing courses. I just couldn't find it. It wasn't English literature that would work. So therefore, had the person written street plays and skits, etc. in college was one thing I would look at. If I wanted to find a production person, I didn't have a scientific base. So people who were jugadu in nature were my first port of call for that. So one was really hiring more for the attitude and a little bit of the passion and a little bit of, what one made. I've always turned and said that a resume is really not worth its weight in anything. It is the live resume of the time you spend with a person that tells you how good or bad they are. We did this successfully, and because our ideas were really, they used to come, everyone was coming from right of field, we would come from left of field with something, and clients would just love the creativity we came with. 2 years into that, we realized we were running a company that had a lot of creativity, a lot of spirit, but no systems. And we were becoming chaotic because, we made money, how do you share it? People work late at an event, what time do they come the next morning? Who reports to who? It was so informal. I used to call it a bhaichara company. And that's when we looked and hired our first professional CEO who we would report to. So we turned and said that rather than, I'm the owner manager, Sue Fertal was working with a company at that point in time, and she had done lifestyle marketing in the US. And she was a very system and process-driven person. So we got her on board as our first CEO. And I often turn and say that whole turning of the needle from spirit to system and then finding its balance in between is what happened. So that was phase one of Encompass. And that was the decade, all the way till 2008. And we just kept growing larger and larger, doing all kinds of things across the country. And by the end of it, I think we had about 200 plus people. We had about 7 offices.
Right.
Can you hear me? I think there was some...
So there was that was phase one. So keeping to phase one, Roshan, from being the boss of your organization to getting in Sue, who then became the professional CEO, was there any change that you and Sukrit had to make within yourselves? Because, the rest of the team would have been looking at you and getting their cues from you. So how did you kind of change yourselves to fit into the new organization?
So I again, because I have at any given point in time run multiple careers, because bear in mind that I was still hosting television, still doing radio, still hosting live events, I was very keen to make myself redundant in the process very early. So I handed over charge to Sukrit and Sue and sort of almost became a notional presence who would come in on a board meeting or come in when there was a key pitch or a key idea that was required. And I had moved to Bombay by this time and Sukrit was in Delhi. And I realized that there was a problem, which was that my not being present was actually not working too well for us, because I really thought that I could let the reins go. But without proper handovers, without building layers in the company, because again we were almost just a 2-layer kind of organization, but now we needed multiple people and multiple layer levels. So I think building almost a group of people who you would listen to was important. So obviously we were very cognizant of what Sue wanted to do, but it wasn't just what she wanted to do, it was what we heard from our employees. I think we started in the very, very early days. We started doing these 360-degree reviews, asking people to tell us what they wanted, what would make a better office, what would make us a learning organization, not just a doing organization. So all of these things is what we were doing.
You were doing.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday.
On the IVM podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!
For employees in an owner-driven business, it's fairly simple to build their rapport, because they know that the owner is there and the owner is not going anywhere else. But when the owners are part of the business and you have a professional CEO, how did your employees make a shift? And the reason I'm asking you is that today, when you have a lot of family businesses that bring in their external CEOs, while at the same time the inheritors are also part of the business, the employees kind of don't know, which side to align with. What has been your experience and what can you tell them?
So I think there are 2 important things. One is the fact of saying, what is your code of conduct? Now, most people who hire professional CEOs expect them to be professional till they are not in the room. And if the owner comes in the room, suddenly it should become a different equation. Now, I just don't believe in that. If I have given someone the responsibility, then I need to set the first example, because everyone's looking at me for a cue. Am I listening to the CEO? Do I take cognizance of their ideas? So that was the important thing to do, that Sukrit and I sat together and worked on an entire template. And once the template was frozen, it was going to be implemented for the next 6 months, and we would review it after 6 months. And we would hold our peace till that point in time. That was step 1. The next thing is that I always tell people, saying, again, as you rightly said, people will look at the owner for cues of how to behave, of cues. We have been so open, in fact, to people giving us feedback, giving us criticism, which very often what I call Lala companies have not had. And that is a huge chasm which they need to cross, because how can they hear someone else criticizing them? The other thing which I've always built as a rule is to turn and say that, comment in public, criticize in private. So if you want your CEO to be the leader, comment them in public. And when you have an issue, discuss it behind closed doors. Don't let people get to see the fault lines in public, because then they will jump onto the same bandwagon.
And they take advantage of it, playing one against the other.
I had so many people who came at that time, telling me, saying, do you know what so-and-so? Don't tell me. The CEO sits in the office, go and tell her. Right?
Right.
And that is important. And at the end of the year, when you're doing your reviews, in your reviews, make sure that you have a ear to the ground. You're not even becoming absolutely blind. But if the company's performance is good, if the health is good, if people are saying they're happy at their work, then if all parameters you're scoring, then you don't need to lend a ear to one person who wants to come and give you a little bit to snitch a little on what's happening. I have seen that happen in huge organizations, that somebody will have one little sidekick. Beware, that is the company man. I never let that happen. I never let anybody become a company man or the boss's man, as it was. And people tried relentlessly. So that was one big change.
Yeah, but Roshan, actually you can't blame the poor employees either, because the owners are there to stay, but the CEOs may change. So they really need to keep both parties happy, which is difficult a lot of times.
But what happens is that when employees try and get, there's a thin line, and in India very often we cross this line between personal and professional. I have been to event companies where a general manager is actually parking cars for guests at a private function of the owner. Now, undermining the person's professionalism, you will never get a professional result out of them. And I have seen again this happen very often. So I know it's difficult, but for example, at any given point in time, I have never let people turn and say that, yes, I have an open door policy, but bear in mind that what you openly come and tell me at my door, I will openly go and discuss with my CEO, and then we will together. Sukrit became the CEO after 2 years because Sue had a personal assignment, etc., which she had to. She got married, and she wanted to move, and because she was in the family way. So the whole thing was that Sukrit took over, and I was again very clear saying, Sukrit, your strengths are this. I think you need a strong finance person, because neither you nor I are good at finance. If you have a good administrative head as well, it will help. And making yourself redundant. I mean, when a Mr. Birla, etc., run companies today, they are not present at every company. There is an ethos, there is a culture, there is a charter of values. And again, I sometimes think people used to think we were mad, but in 2 years into starting the company, we used to be doing these offsites, and we would be talking to people about what are the pillars on which we are built, what do we do, what do we not do, what defines an Encompass person. And I really always felt a lot of pride in saying that from a unorganized sector to make a organized company that becomes deeply respected as a marketing partner. And I must say that Sandeep Goyal, who used to head Rediffusion, was a friend of mine. And because I used to spend a lot of time, I used to see how he structured the agency. And I used to say that if we have to structure ourselves and have to gain the respect of people, otherwise we must structure ourselves similarly. So bringing professional systems and structures does help, and keeping yourself as an owner out of the business is really, really critical. Because again, if you can make yourself redundant, that's when you can get onto another ship and sail it another direction if required.
Right. And now, so after Sue, you did have an owner as the CEO. So, yes. As partners of a business and having a professional CEO, in yourself, you had to deal with a partner who was also an owner and a CEO. What were some of the challenges that you went through? Because it is impossible that when there are three people, they will all agree on everything. So how did you handle yourself, and what are the learnings that you can share with some of the others who would be listening in on how to handle two different kinds of partners?
So when I had different kind of partners, again, when there is a question that impacts the company in its overall, if you have decided along with the owner partner that this is where you want to be 5 years from now, and the professional team is not delivering that, you need to find a solution with your owner partner. You need to call in the CEO and say, this is what's going right, this is what's going wrong. I had a strange situation where my partner was also now playing the CEO's role. So while we know the larger vision of where we are going, he had certain deliverables. So as a professional CEO at the same time, his job, if he had an incentive, that incentive was worked basis certain deliverables. If he had key reporting structures, they remained in a particular way. He couldn't suddenly change them to take advantage of them and shift them. Again, in hindsight, it sounds a lot easier. But yes, there have been times when one has faced the conflict of turning and saying, hey, I think you're treating this matter more as an owner and not as a professional. And we have had that. So I would not say that everything works out beautifully. You will face that point of conflict and sometimes have to make a choice. But it is these choices that actually show, I think, a company's true merit and its mettle. And again, as I keep saying that, the more you hire people, again, there was a David Ogilvy thing where when people used to join, they used to give them these Matryoshka dolls where one doll was inside another. And they would say, if each of us hire people who are smaller than us, we'll be a company of,
midgets.
Dwarfs.
Yeah.
And if we had to each hire somebody bigger than us, then we'd be a company of giants. And frankly, I've always maintained a black book of people I wanted to hire and always reached out to them. I did it yesterday with a new venture because, there was somebody I was chasing for a while. I said, listen, I've been waiting. Now you're free. Come and do this. So make that list of people you want to work with. Dream up your ideal team and keep filling those spots because it will keep changing. And as a set of owners, if you can just imbibe and differentiate the personal from the professional, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it can hold you in good stead.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's simple things like turning and saying that, I'll give you a small example. Okay, in the incentive, there's a car that you can give to the CEO, but because he's the owner and he wants a different brand, can he change it? Can he spend a little bit more?
If it's his own money, he can take it out and top up.
Exactly, but if he tops it up and that is looked upon as the CEO's car, does the next reporting person feel that, "Arey, mere paas choti gaadi hai, should I be getting something bigger?" Because they may not know that there was a top up. There are. I'm telling you, these are what class you fly. So there was a time when I would be a host and I would get the privilege of flying business class. And there were times when I would be going as the head of the company, and if it was the early days and we were not doing well, Encompass would buy me a economy ticket and I would decide if I wanted to upgrade or not, with my own money. And it's just, I'm saying, and life tests you on the small things. I have seen people write off personal expenses as professional expenses on many occasions. I think it's a lot of the ethos that comes from my parents because they were teachers, and my dad had turned and said once कि बेटा जिंदगी में ना आदमी इज्जत कमाता है और knowledge जो होती है वो acquire करता है और कुछ नहीं मिलता. So I don't know, that always stays at the back of my head, and I don't know, I base a lot of my decision making on those principles.
Yeah, it is actually, the people that I speak with, it is what we call the middle class values.
Absolutely.
Which are...
I completely agree.
And, if you ask me to define the middle class values, I guess I'll have to scratch my head and, put down a certain list of values. But generally speaking, the middle class values are the ones that hold people in good stead, especially when there is manmutav, when there is, a difference of opinion. And, data shows that most family businesses or promoter-driven businesses fail to propagate because of these small differences. How, you have shared a lot about, your personal dealings, but if there was two mantras that you needed to give to people who run businesses with partners, what would those two things be on specifically handling conflicts or manmutav?
When it comes to handling conflict, if there is a third party who can be an objective observer, I have felt that to be very important. I have done that on multiple occasions. So we had a particular shareholding and there was a need to change the shareholding, and it was our CEO who was a great friend of both Sukrit and me, and he came in and said, listen, this is what I would advise and this is what you need to do. So I think finding an objective third party who, best case, you respect them and you don't know them very well personally. But if you know them personally and you respect their decision and you know they can take a professional call, is always good when you want to solve conflict. The second thing is to separate the emotion from the problem, the ego from the issue. How dare the recording in the
Yes, please start.
Okay. So as I said, that one thing obviously is finding that third objective individual who both of you respect and trust to try and solve that conflict. The second thing is keeping your ego out of the issue. How dare you say this to me? Tum kaun hote ho? Ye sab jo hota hai na, that just doesn't work. I've always tried to say that, listen, and I think actually, frankly, between Sukrit and me, the amazing part is that many of our colleagues who worked with us for many years say, wo to aap hi ki sunenge, or they'll tell him saying he will only listen to you. It's good to know that at least we have each other's ear even today. After 20 years of working together, if you have that ability, because it seems we are always working towards a common goal. If in 2008 we decided to sell to WPP, it was because we had a common goal of saying we have taken a disorganized industry and made it organized, but how do we make it more respectable in the marketing mix? And how do we leave something which is going to be a legacy for the next set of people? Is what was the problem we were trying to solve.
Yeah, but it isn't, since you do talk about selling your company, was it an easy decision? Because, with getting respectability, getting money, getting access to a larger ecosystem, there is also giving up of the control.
It is. But again, what you talked about saying middle class values. Now, in those values, I think one of the important things is also to know what you're good at, and there's so much posturing that I see people do very often, but know what you're good at, but what you're not good at, if you can accept. So we even when we did our sale, we realized in 1 year, because we visited Cannes and I was on the promo jury, and then we met up with Martin Sorrell and all the entire team from WPP, and they had Colvin Harris and everybody from JWT who were our partners, and we realized that we were weak on brand and we were weak on predictability of business, because the event business was aaj kuan khoda, pani piya, phir kahin aur chale gaye, naya kuan khoda. You were not trying to dig one deep well, which is what advertising would do with the client, and then keep getting water out of it. So this whole thing of contracting and long-term clients is something which we said we've got to develop a lot more of. Financial jurisprudence, because the year we did the handshake is the year when suddenly there was a big dip, and if you remember 2008, 2009 were tough years.
Yeah.
And we had to make this terrible call of letting go of a couple, not a couple, actually about 50 people at that point in time, and close down 2-3 offices, which we realized were not... They were servicing offices, not business offices. They were not getting us revenue. They were just servicing the revenue that maybe Delhi or Bombay was doing. And we had to take those calls. So again, can you detach emotion and objectivity, which is such a difficult thing to do? But I see it, when I travel abroad and I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs internationally, they are able to do it a lot better. But I think as Indians, we get deeply emotional about everything we do. मैं कभी बार कॉन्फ्रेंस में बता के बोलता हूँ कि आपने ये बात दिल से बोली कि दिमाग से बोली, दिल से बहुत बोलते हैं ना, हम कर देंगे, we will do this number. नहीं, have you thought about it? How will you do this number? What will be done? So I think those are important aspects also to look at. So we let them do what they were good at, and we kept telling them, don't stop us from doing what we are good at. And thankfully they did. To their credit, they did. And our thirst for a bigger canvas and a larger role to play is what kept driving us. Frankly, our earnout was over in 5 years, but even today it's been 10 years, but we're still a part of that partnership because we have grown the canvas of our business tenfold. We have become the largest agency, if you ask us. We've added multiple new things which we learned to do. So we didn't know how to do shopper marketing. But that team came on board as one of the teams from another acquisition that happened. Or we got to know how to do rural with a lot of measurement. That was something that came because of the data analytic kind of background we learned from a WPP and from Group M and others there. And now finally we are from a JWT Encompass to a Geometry, which was a JWT Ogilvy venture, and now we're finally purely Geometry Encompass, which makes us part of the largest global activation platform. Have all been moves that we made, very cognizant of what we are good at and what we need to learn.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Plus, again, Sukrit and I we had this discussion last week where he said, listen, you have this ability to keep doing ventures. So I keep saying that things that I can't do myself, I either find the problem and find someone to solve it and I fund them, or I partner with people. So 2011, I recommended a bunch of acquisitions to JWT, but they were very small. They were companies that were all under a crore each. And I said, but if you invest in them now, I promise you in 5 years, they're going to be huge. And everybody was like, no, it's too small an acquisition. There's too much stuff that happens. I said, okay, fine. I want to definitely invest in 2-3 of these. And I did. And one of them went on to become Glitch, which is today an acquisition that happened last year by WPP. And it's amongst the top 10 they will kill me if I say a digital agency because they're really more a modern marketing agency for millennials, as they call themselves. But a bunch of young people who I saw were doing very different things, very exciting things. And I said, listen, I can come on board. You can either give people stupid money or smart money, right? So you can invest with stupid money, which is मैंने पैसे दे दिया, मुझे आप profit दे देना. Smart money is money where I may not have put in so much money, but I'm there as an advisor. I'm there giving them value in terms of the experiences I have had. I'm connecting them to people. I'm bringing new services on board. I'm bringing new clients on board. That's where I often tell people who are seeking out venture capital saying, don't look for lazy money, look for smart money. And smart money makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
So I've done that serially. And Sukrit says, he has been tunnel visioned only into income. He believes that's his lifeblood, but I need transfusion every now and then from new things.
Right. So it's actually been quite a dream journey. But as you sit here today on Valentine's Day, what are some of the thoughts that you have for the future?
So I feel that there's a major shift that's happening where my parents always saved for a rainy day. My generation spent a little bit of money but said, listen, I must have assets that can help me in a rainy day. And the next generation just doesn't want to own assets. So I find a very big shift happening in terms of attitudes, where millennials are looking out only for creating great experiences, great memories. They're very cause-driven. They're a lot more global in their view. They're a little more activist in their nature, if you ask me. So I combine all of this, and I keep saying that in the space I was in the space of building physical experiences. I then learned how to build virtual experiences, and now I want to really build understanding millennial culture. I want to build things where millennials come together as communities. So I built this thing called Kommune, which is a spoken word community. It's almost going back to my roots because it has deep roots in performance art and theater and helping people create, in B and C towns as well. So I really feel that, sometimes the philanthropist in you, right, it comes to the fore because you're saying, I think I've done enough for myself and for my next generation. Now what can I do at a larger level?
Yeah, so you're behaving like a millennial yourself, Roshan.
So that's why I keep saying. So somebody told me that I think millennials are those people born between 1988 and 2000. I said it's rubbish. Millennials is a mindset. You've got to have that mindset to be a millennial. Are you tech savvy? Are you willing to use technology to your end? Are you, as I said, far more acquisitive of experiences rather than physical assets? And I'm like that. My wife is scared that one of these days I will sell everything and give it to charity. Right. Yes. So, Roshan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I hope I made some sense because I'm sure you talk to a lot of people from a very different kind of background. I keep coming.
All I can say is that I think you spoke dil se, which is what makes a difference. And you have indeed shared experiences which have been personal experiences, which I'm sure that anybody who listens to you through the podcast is going to carry back a lot of learnings. So that dil se works. Dimag se, of course, but the dil se works. So,
yeah, I think all the time I've told people about, dimag se socho, I do believe mere bahut cheezein dil se kari.
Dil se.
So one of these days, I think I'll write down some dimagi cheezein and mail them to you.
Yes. And thank you so much. Pleasure talking to you.
The Inheritors podcast series by Bloomberg Quint.
Did you know that Parsis in Mumbai, instead of being left at the Tower of Silence after they die, are now cremated? And why? Because a cow fell sick in the early 1990s. Did you know that the smog in Delhi is caused by something that farmers in Punjab do and that there's no way to stop them? Did you know that there wasn't one gas tragedy in Bhopal, but 3? One of them was seen, but 2 were unseen. Did you know that many well-intentioned government policies hurt the people they're supposed to help? Why was demonetization a bad idea? How should GST have been implemented? Why are all our politicians so corrupt when not all of them are bad people? I'm Amit Verma, and in my weekly podcast, The Seen and the Unseen, I take a shot at answering all these questions and many more. I aim to go beyond the seen and show you the unseen effects of public policy and private action. I speak to experts on economics, political philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and constitutional law so that the insights can blow not only my mind, but also yours. The Seen and the Unseen releases every Monday. So do check out the archives and follow the show at seenunseen.in. You can also subscribe to The Seen and the Unseen on whatever podcast app you happen to prefer.